This video is on the play The Emperor Jones, written by Eugene O'Neill. It is a significant work of American literature and initially it was titled The Silver Bullet. It bases itself on the movements of Expressionism, where an unreliable narrator is used to expose his subjective expressions of an external reality. Now, coming to the plot overview, the play is set somewhere on a secluded island in the West Indies and it is populated by natives, black people. They are governed by a ruler known as Brutus Jones, and there is also a Cockney trader who is white, Henry Smithers, and he is also in collaboration with Brutus Jones, and they both together dominate the natives of the place. Now he is informed of a native uprising or a revolution to overthrow the dictatorial Brutus Jones. Jones is not worried because he has the natives fooled into believing that he can only be killed by a silver bullet. And Jones states that he has saved enough money in a bank outside and he can escape the island whenever he wants to. Now he plans to escape through the dense forest which he has lined up with food at short distances so as to survive throughout his journey. While in the forest, he is unable to find his way out or locate the food because of the thoughts, his memories that overpower him. The resultant anxiety causes him to feel threatened and he fears that the natives might have planned to trap and kill him. Then the expressionistic scenes begin with scene 2 that continue till the second last scene of the play, where his abstract fears, his fears about his past misdeeds, his violent crimes, and also about general American slavery, the past of American slavery, take shape before him as he passes through the forest. Now, these scenes and the supernatural visions are reflective of the racism that the black community has suffered over the ages. And Brutus Jones, too, is a victim of this racist treatment, while he also becomes a victimizer now. The victim becomes the victimizer of his own people, and that is also a theme explored in the play. Moving on to the historical background, the play has a historical background. The United States occupied the island of Haiti in July 1915 when 330 US Marines landed at a port in Haiti at the approval of President Woodrow Wilson. The president of Haiti, Wilbert Guillaume Sam, was murdered by insurgents within his own country because he was a dictator, and this prompted US to take control due to the region's instability. The occupation of Haiti ended in August 1934 by the then President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It is this backdrop that becomes the basis for the subject matter of the play. Native insurgents revolt against the dictatorial Brutus Jones and ultimately kill him. The first scene opens on an island that has been ruled by an African American who has completely adopted the ways of his colonizers, and there is a conspiracy between Jones and Smithers. They overtax the natives, they exploit them, and this is indicated by a symbolic drum beat of this instrument known as tom-toms. So now this instrument is beating throughout the play. When you will see different scenes, it will be continuing beating throughout the play, but the intensity of the sound will rise, and it indicates that Brutus Jones is reckoning with his past actions. Smithers warns him of the evil spirits in the forest, but he is not scared at all because he sees himself as smarter than the other natives and he believes himself to be at par with whites. That is what he thinks, and this also indicates that he in a way feels subordinate to them. His mind has been conditioned in that manner. Slavery has worked in that way. So Smithers holds contempt for the fact that Jones, a black man, is in power, and that's why he misleads him. He wants him to be killed by the natives, but he pretends to be his friend anyway. So that is what happens here. Now he always acts subordinate to Jones and pretends to be a loyal advisor, but deep down he is thoroughly racist and considers Jones inferior to him. He believes that the natives are brutes and they deserve what they get, and he hopes Jones too would be killed for his boastfulness. Now in the second scenes, Uh, as he rushes through the forest, Jones is isolated. He feels alone. He's frenzied and confused. He has taken off his shoes at the start. He's unable to find his way out or even his hidden food. Then what happens is his fears become literal entities on stage rather than simply internal emotional experiences. Whenever he fires his gun out of desperation, he also alerts the natives about his location in the forests. So that is what he does. He visualizes his little formless fears in the form of black, shapeless beings with glittering little eyes and seemingly like werewolves. And his mental state starts to collapse or deteriorate slowly. So he worries that the natives are coming to kill him, and that paranoia compels him to fire one of his lead bullets on these shapeless fears. As he moves further into the forest, the moon rises, the night intensifies, there is tense silence along with a mystical glow all around. The dense forest setting makes him feel trapped. He feels he is unable to find his food, he is unable to take rest. He feels the drum beat going louder and louder, and he feels that the natives are closing in on him. So, a black man in a Pullman's porter uniform appears and sits on the ground before him, and it starts to play dice. Now, this is an apparition. This is a hallucination of his own mind, and this is a man whom he had killed earlier. This man is known as Jeff, and he was killed by Jones when he too worked as a Pullman porter, and he has lost his hat by now too. So that means he's being stripped of his emperorly qualities, and he's becoming more and more human or losing his arrogance. With the scene 4, his uniform coat tears up and he decides to take rest, but again he visualizes a small group of black men dressed in clothes of convicts. Again, this is also a reference to his past term that he served as a convict for murdering that black man. Now they are followed and commanded by a white prison guard. He even uses his whip to command Jones to pick up the shovel and get to work, and instantly he becomes subservient. Even though he was an emperor just a few moments earlier, he immediately returns to his haunted past of slavery and just acquiesces, just agrees. But when the guard whips him on his shoulders, Jones becomes insulted, he becomes very, very angry, and he fires his bullets on him. But it is again an apparition. He is just wasting his bullets out of his own fears that are being materialized, and this is a technique known as expressionism, which we will be seeing in another video. Now, the scene 5 is a very important scene in the play because it dramatizes the whole American slavery scene here. So, at the middle of the night, Jones reaches a clearing with a thick stump at the center, and that stump is basically resembling an auction block. Now, slave auctions used to happen in America in its past of slavery, and that is what is being dramatized and even challenged here. So he falls to his knees and prays to God, begging for forgiveness, even though he had abandoned religion earlier. Now, the images in the scene bring up the times of slave auctions when people were, they came to trading slaves as a way of diversion. Like all other images, there is an unreal rigidity about these two. A group of slaves are brought in, 3 men, 2 women, and 1 nursing a baby. And James too is commanded to climb up the stump, and because he has been an emperor recently, and he becomes indignant and fires in rage. He kills the auctioneer and he kills the planter, but again in his visions. He's just visualizing all this. In the next scene, while he enters further and further into the dark, intense forest, he visualizes a group of natives who are just wearing loin clothes, and they are wailing loudly. They are swaying from here to there, and this makes him terrified, and he begins to wail with them too. Again, this is a reminiscence of painful past of slavery, the painful, troubled past. Then again in the scene 7, there is early morning, and James reaches at the foot of a large tree next to the river with an altar of boulders around it and kneels before it. Suddenly, a Congo witch doctor appears next to the tree. He is wearing various animal parts as bones and horns as ornaments, and the doctor performs a ritualistic dance, and Jones is horrified, and it appears that he is pacifying evil spirits, and Jones must be offered as a sacrifice for the same. So he crafts up a crocodile and that might come and attack Jones, but Jones ultimately shoots it with his revolver too. So this is again a stereotypical dramatization, a stereotypical presentation, and this is also a critical section of the play because O'Neill paints the superstition associated with blackness, which also came to be seen as controversial later on. For example, the stereotypical portrayal of an African witch doctor conjuring up a crocodile to kill Jones is seen as blackness being equated with uncivilized savagery and superstition. Even though the play is clearly critical of the institution of slavery, its depiction of blackness as mindless and violent is critical. The last scene again is a return to the realistic setting in which the play moves from its stage-wise deterioration of the mind of Jones to a physical end at the hands of the natives. Again, here the blacks are portrayed as unthinking and superstitious when they are shown to have melted silver coins to craft them into bullets to kill Jones, thus believing in his fake claim that he could only be killed by silver bullets. So the play ends with Smithers mocking the gullible natives as silly and ignorant who believed they killed Jones by outsmarting him, even though there was really no truth to Jones's claim about his charmed life. So that is how the scene 8 ends. Now, we understand that this is a tragic character, just like any of the Shakespearean tragic heroes. His tragic character flaws are pride and arrogance. Memories keep coming to haunt him in the form of hallucinations. In some, he is victimizing others, but in all, he is a victim mostly on account of his race. So, this play is a comment on racism too, and an attack on the institution of slavery. Scene 5 dramatizes the horror of American slavery in a very direct way, where a slave auction is staged again as part of Jones's memories of his painful past. The man who was an emperor just the other day is vulnerable, cornered, and victimized by the memories of a cruel society. All this is a monologue. There is no actual character from scenes 2 to 7, but Jones and his troubled psyche. All of these are figments of his imagination and the remnants of his troubled past. So the play is definitely an exposition of the troublesome past of American slavery, the horrors, but because of its stereotypical depiction of black people as gullible, or images such as the Black Congo witch doctor, have earned it a name wherein it has been criticized by critics for it's that kind of depiction, and that is why there are some critical views about the play also. Nevertheless, it is a very important and significant play for its times, for daring to write about such a sensitive topic at that time, which is currently also very sensitive. So this is a very brilliant dramatization of the fact.